Hi, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 2, Episode 3, Red Markets, a game of economic horror. Of course, with me, as always, are my co-hosts, James Wallace and Greg Stolze. Yeah, so I'm very excited for this episode because if you aren't aware, I was there when the author, Caleb Stokes, came up with the idea. We actually podcast about it on Role Playing Public Radio through a longstanding miniseries on RPPR called Game Designers Workshop. I think it was 2013 when he first proposed the idea of red markets on a podcast, and we followed the development. I helped him playtest it and helped him kickstart it. I've written for it. I've written in some of the encounters in the main rule book. I've written a supplement called Trabajo. And so what is it? Red Markets is a game of economic horror. It is the simplest way to explain it is the zombie apocalypse happened, but you still have to pay your bills. There is still an economy, and there's still currency, there's still work. So the economic horror comes from the fact that you take the role of what is called a taker in the post-apocalyptic, post-crash economy. In the parlance of the game, you are someone who goes out the relative safety of the walls of your enclave. Enclaves are small fortified settlements inside the Loss, which is in the default setting, the North American continent west of the Mississippi. And there are all these little enclaves where humans have survived despite, hundreds of millions of zombies, tens of millions of zombies still wandering around, although they are called casualties in the game's jargon. And you have to leave the safety of the enclave to go out and do jobs or scores. Jobs are given to you by a client, and you have to negotiate a contract, or scores are finding caches of valuable goods and then selling them. The currency is called bounty, and we'll get into what that is later. And the horror comes from everything in the game has a cost, and you have to decide what price you're willing to pay to complete a job and to do what adventurers historically tried to do, which is not be an adventurer anymore. Your goal in the game is to retire, is to earn enough money so that you no longer have to go out and risk your life every week in order to pay the bills and keep your dependents fed and sheltered.
Although, can I talk about Mr. Jawls?
Yes, please do.
Which is my favorite part of the design. So yeah, if you do everything right and are lucky, you will achieve your goals, and you will have enough money that if you're willing to work 60 hours a week and get a couple roommates, you can scrape by inside the safety of the walls, and you will be rewarded with a life of quiet desperation that looks so much better than the life of extremely loud desperation that you experience out in the Loss, scavenging for crap. But when you reach that point where you're just about to pull the trigger of becoming that annoying pensioner who, lives by himself and complains about how hard he has to still work and brags about his job, his previous adventuresome life as a zombie killer, the specter arises of just one last score, and you could go on and, have your little retirement as a schlub. Or you could take all the resources that you've invested into that, get some really top-notch gear, hire a couple mercenaries, gin up, leave it all on the battlefield, and try to set yourself up as set yourself up for life. You're gonna be one of those rich fat cat motherfuckers who's been exploiting you all this time. Well, if you complete the Jawls job, you get to join the oppressor class and drink what passes for champagne in the post-apocalypse inside the safety of the resettlement zone. And that's, it's this horrific push your luck thing. And I love it.
Yeah, Joel. Yeah, just one last score, and you get to choose between living the life to the good life. So that is serves as the default campaign finale. So Red Markets is a very structured game on the sections of time of like the sections of a taker's life, both their home life, finding work, and then doing the work, and then getting paid, and then spending the money. So there is bookkeeping in this game.
And a lot of it. Because it's economics. You have to have bookkeeping for a horror game about economics.
But it's not just economic bookkeeping. There's a lot of bookkeeping generally. This is quite a numerical system. It's quite a stat and skill-driven system. There's a lot of things that need to be rolled. There's a lot of, I think, opportunities for min-maxing, if that's the kind of game you are, which I have to say I am not, which left me largely cold.
Welcome to economics, James.
I studied economics, up to the age of 18, so I have a fair grounding in this stuff. And
so what is...
I was going to say, the survival horror genre is basically is a genre about scarcity. It's one of the drivers is you don't have enough of what you need, whether that's food or ammunition or safety, or in the case of this, actual currency. So it seems to be just exacerbating, amplifying that layer that's already present within the genre.
Yeah, I think it also counts, though, as a critique of not the best horror movie stuff, but the worst horror movie stuff, the ones that are more action adventure-y, zombie movie. I should say zombie instead of horror. Zombie is definitely a much more tightly focused subgenre. And you have, it talks about the people who fantasize about the zombie apocalypse. And having been through COVID lockdown, we no longer need Red Markets to show us that, oh yeah, all that survivalism was just talk. These are people who are unwilling to put a mask on their face or go without a haircut for 8 months. Or, some of them. Some of them. Some of them, I'm sure, are very fine people indeed. But, yeah, Red Markets is... The ticky-tackiness of it didn't bother me because the mood of it is so much about stress and anxiety, and I can't let one thing go, but I can't keep track of everything either. And I think that having it be very mechanically finicky is intentional. I mean, it may not be what you like, but you can't say it wasn't what Caleb meant.
No, absolutely. It's very much, it's a part of the design. And there's a particular school of video game design that does exactly the same thing with all of your equipment suffering different rates of wear and needing to be revised. And indeed, all the styles of digital RPG where you have to level up your equipment and sometimes level up the equipment's individual skills. And it's just keeping track of all those numbers. There is a market for that. There are people who really enjoy that level of almost being overwhelmed by numbers. And if you then spread another layer of you do not have all the resources that you want to, in a video game, particularly a free-to-play RPG, probably on mobile phones, you would be expected to pay real-world money to get the resources that you that you want to level up all your equipment or keep it in good repair so that your priceless armor that you've quested 10 hours for doesn't break and disappear. That's not an option in Red Markets, and I think Caleb may have missed a trick here. This is something we did with violence, actually. Greg Stikian's Violence back in the days of Hogshead. We had actual experience point tokens. We printed, I think, 20 on the back of the rulebook, but you could send us real money to buy more. Nobody ever did, but we felt it was worth a try.
Gonna say, I feel it would be awfully hypocritical of Caleb to do that. It's like, oh, this whole game is... it's talking about how bad capitalism is for it. It would be like it would be like Surgeon General branded cigarettes. It's just.
Yes. Do you think those would sell? I think they might.
Absolutely. People love irony so much. It's the only thing that makes that provides vital lubricant between our pattern matching brains and the increasing sense that all is chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, the cynicism market, that's a good market, as Bill Hicks, I think, said. But but Violence was a 32-page satire of role-playing games, whereas this is very much not 32 pages. This is pushing 500 pages.
It's a fat bastard.
250,000 words. It's a very, very substantial book. There's an awful lot of material here. And one of the things, I think a mistake I made when we were talking about Coyote and Crow is I didn't distinguish my criticisms of the book with my criticisms of the game. And actually in Coyote and Crow, some of those overlapped. And I think the confusion that was evident through the book's layout and structure was part of the problem with the game design as well. And I don't think that's so much the problem here. But I do have problems with the book as well. The book as a book, the way the book is structured, the way it presents the information to a new player, the way you learn about this world and how you're going to operate within it, or your players are going to operate within it. Though I will say it does something that I've not seen an RPG or any other book like this, an in-world book, do, which is it puts the glossary at the front. And there's about 4 or 5 pages of glossary of game terms and in-world terms. And I read through those and I went, yep, I got it. Okay, I understand this world. I understand the game. I understand how it works because I know the terms and I can already begin to feel how those terms are how those entities are going to fit together. And then the game goes into literally I think it's 150 pages of in-world, written in character, world history and world geography and world background stuff. Most of which is not relevant to the actual game. I mean, it's explaining how the world got to the state it is interesting, but that's 80,000 words of text. That's literally a novel in length, and it should have been a novel. By the end, I was just skipping through. I was skipping pages going, I can't tell what of this is going to become relevant and what is just color text to get me in the mood. But I don't have time to read a novel right now.
Right. I'm already as moody as I'm going to get.
Pretty much, yes.
I think the world building section is very long and common criticism of the book, but it's absolutely essential because Red Markets is not a standard zombie apocalypse. When you say zombie apocalypse, everyone thinks Walking Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, that kind of thing. And Red Markets is substantially different. For example, the biggest one is not their society exists without zombies. There are sections of the world without roaming hordes of the undead. And this in the game, it's called the Recession, and the United States government has somewhat recovered east of the Mississippi because the blight, the zombie causing paradoxical virus, whatever it is. Does not do well when it crosses water. So zombies can't cross the Mississippi. And then it has to explain the economy and also UBIC, which are very that there is trade between the lost where the zombies are and the recession where the zombies aren't, even though it's underground black market, contraband, smuggling and that kind of thing. Because there is a quarantine in effect and the government doesn't want, other, civilians going across the line. The other thing, of course, is that there is a version of the internet, which is called Ubic in the game. Basically, Caleb took the idea of the hot air balloon internet servers, which was passed around in the 2010s as a possibility, and said, yes, those are still up. There's tons of cheap computing devices that can still do basically Wi-Fi. And so there's a shitty, terrible internet called Ubic. And so that's how you can negotiate with clients who aren't in your home enclave. You can, and it also allows a lot of interesting game mechanics because you can call in, references and, you can ask for help and you can look things up. And people can threaten you over the Ubic, and
I'm gonna point the GoPro at the bomb, and you tell me which wire to cut. Okay?
Yeah, that happens a lot, and it's and then you owe that person money because they helped you, and they expect you to pay them back, and you can stiff them, but then you won't be able to call and help again. And so because there are so many, and also the fact that the bounty, explaining why this is valuable in the loss and in the recession. There's a substantial amount of world building to explain why this isn't there, and all of it can be used to generate ideas for your game. But obviously, yeah, you can't ignore it. You can just get into the basics immediately. I've taught a lot of people how to play the game, and obviously I don't explain everything. I don't, I don't go give them a 6-hour lecture before we start. But it is so different than the average apocalyptic setting that if Caleb had not done that, people are like, well, why? This doesn't make any sense. Why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And I think there's also in horror, just in general, not just in games, but in movies and video games, is to hey, this is my tech. This is what the theme is about. Guess what? Capitalism, is going to crush us all, and or is the existential threat looming around us all? It's a game of economic horde. The zombies or the weather, the real threat, or what the systems are doing to us. Having to go out to get worthless things in an abandoned video game store because someone in the recession is willing to pay for it is farcical, but also horrifying. Yeah,
but again, that's one of the texts of an awful lot of zombie horror. That it's the zombies are not the horror. The horror is other people and what they will do for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
partly do to you, or because there's scarcity, as previously noted. Everything is more desirable than it was. Oh, and another footnote: this is not present day zombie horror. This is slightly cyberpunk.
Yeah,
so it's another one of those features where 3D printing is everywhere, which was another feature of Coyote and Crow, which we talked about a few weeks ago. And also, I've just been reading, because it reminded me strangely of this, William Gibson's The Peripheral, which has just become a series on Amazon. I've not seen the series, but I have read the book. And that's another world that's on its way to hell. There are no zombies, but there is grinding, crushing economic pressure on everyone. The jackpot, yeah. Gibson's brilliant concept of there is no one disaster that basically brings about the downfall or a downfall of humanity. It's just a combination of factors that we put into play and then kind of looked away from. And I felt there was resonance of that within this sense that we brought this horror upon us, plus zombies. But it's the economics. The zombies came from somewhere. The game never explains.
It presents theories, and it basically says modern science cannot even
get a grip on the questions of this.
So you can make up whatever story, or it doesn't matter. It's essentially a plot device to use as you will.
Yes,
there are also...
All we know about the zombie plague is that it's very, very black, in the same way that the thing that brings about the uplift of humanity in Coyote and Crow is very, very purple. I was, every so often, I was just reading through it. It's like, ping, oh yeah, Coyote and Crow. Yeah. I'll shut up about Coyote and Crow now.
Yeah. There's also, aside from the standard casualty, there are other two variants. One are vectors. Essentially, when someone is infected and then they die, they become a vector for a number of hours, which they are the fast-running zombies. They also scream apologies as the human brain is dying.
That's really human. That's really horrible. That's a really good touch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would like to add that I appreciated how well written this was. I think is it fair to say this is a labor of love, a magnum opus, that Caleb did not have to answer to anyone else while he was working on about his ideas.
No, he again, this game is the creation of this game is unusually well documented. On RPPR, you can go back to the original Game Designers Workshop episodes and listen as Caleb comes up with the idea. It took him like 4 years to write and play test and get ready to kickstart. And then the Kickstarter itself was a nightmare for logistical reasons. We've done 3 campaigns of it. We did a playtest campaign of it on RPPR. I ran a campaign of it so Caleb could play it. And then just last year, we finished a campaign to playtest mass combat rules, dealing with what they call Stampede, where, as many zombies fill up the horizon and you have to blow them, and they're coming to your home, so you have to get ready to blow them up before they, overwhelm your enclave. I do also want to mention, aside from vectors, there's also aberrants, that's where you can come up with your truly horrific, whatever flesh body horror thing you can imagine,
as opposed to the diet the diet Pepsi horrificness of a zombie.
Yeah. But like you can have giant, fleshy, cancerous masses of zombie flesh called ganglia. You could even have...
look over there, Luke. What's that look like to you? Well, Merle, I would say that is a fleshopod of rotting, stinking ex-humanity, roughly the size of a John Deere tractor.
Well, this
job...
run? Yeah, this job you have to go down in the sewers. Yeah, don't worry about it. Then there are ones that are just like threats to your emotional health. I forgot what they're called, but they're harmless, but they repeat the actions they remember doing when they're alive. So they're like a zombie woman pushing an empty stroller and trying to feed an invisible child, or something like that. The puppeteer one, which is can control just regular casualties. So like a massive horde of zombies controlled by intelligence. And you can make up your own, and it's very easy to. So,
to cap off the discussion of what Red Markets does, I would say it is sort of a three-front assault on the contentment of the characters, and those fronts are, one, economic, which we've covered. It is very expensive to be as poor as the people in Red Markets. Two, psychological, and it has a pretty deep system for dealing with your traumas, and and this is why you want to have people around you, because you can go be with your loved ones, and it makes you less likely to snap and harms yourself or someone else that you're not trying to harm. And then the third is, of course, physical, where it's like, yes, you are undernourished, and if you get bit, you're just done. Mm-hmm. And so you are constantly running around the three corners of this, okay, well, I'm going to make my character who's very psychologically protected by having lots of dependents. Oh, but that means that they're economically at a disadvantage. Well, to restore my failing fortunes, I'm going to have to go out beyond the wall and and get some stuff and do some jobs. Well, okay, but out past the wall is where all those physical misfortunes happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're trying to build an equilibrium between three things that are fundamentally out of balance, and the only way to have any hope of doing that is to put yourself in extreme physical danger. And this is a dynamic that's not unfamiliar to many screenplays, particularly zombie screenplays.
John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh God, I love
where it's like, oh, you could be safe from the chill of Antarctica, but that's going to put you in the crosshairs of your increasingly paranoid and twitchy coworkers. So you could go off by yourself away from the twitchy coworkers, but then the thing's going to get you. So pick which exposure seems least bad at this exact second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we could go on to how it does what it does.
How it does what it does, which is you pay for everything.
Yeah. To explain the basic mechanics, yes, there is certain game design pillars that Red Markets is built on. The two of which are it is player facing. Players roll the dice almost the entire time. There's a couple. There are a couple optional things where the GM rolls, but the market in the parlance of the game. And the second thing is that everything has a cost. So that means every single bounty, every single unit of ammo or ration to power your character has a cost. So if you want to help somebody who can't pay you back, you just want to feel good about yourself, that's fine. But if you don't help them, that's still going to cost you, because that's going to be a self-control check for your emotional health. And in terms of the dice rolling, it uses Caleb calls it the profit system. You roll 2d10, usually color coded as black and red, and you roll them. And if the black plus your skill is higher, not tied, higher than the red, then you succeed. Otherwise, you fail. Ties go to the market. And matches, odd matches are critical failures. Even matches are critical successes. There is a meta currency, willpower, you can use to
flip the dice.
Yeah, which would almost always succeed, or upgrade a regular success to a critical success, or negate a critical failure into a regular failure. And this is and then you have tough spots and soft spots, which are used for role-playing purposes to generate more willpower by putting your character into danger at a disadvantage. I like animals, so I'm going to rescue that cat up a tree surrounded by casualties, and for example. And it's a very important currency, I can tell you, for many hours of gameplay.
Willpower looked like... After Coyote and Crow, where I'm like, I just don't know what kind of character I'd want to run with this. I'm like, okay, well, I should just make a character for each game we do. I eventually did think of a character I could play in Coyote and Crow, but that's neither here nor there. And so as I was looking at making a character, I'm like, willpower. Willpower is clearly where it's at. That's going to be the max, and it doesn't even have any skills under it. I also picked the Roach character class of who can, again, in your return on investment scheme, can buy successes by paying for it with psychic damage, and who start out with fewer psychic hit points than anyone else. So it's like, okay, sure, I can zero in on this headshot, and all it's going to cost me is I will be slightly more neurotic. And after I had built this character, I'm like, oh, but this is a suboptimal build. I failed to min-max it because I made charisma my dump stat, so nobody loves this poor Roach. And so all the damage he takes to succeed is he won't have any way to ameliorate it other than by spending money to get smashed.
Yep. Yeah. There's actually a fun role-playing thing where you can say how you waste that money. It doesn't have to be booze or drugs. It could just be like, I'm going to pay someone to pedal a bicycle to power up this retro video game system so I can play video games from my childhood for an hour. Or I'm going to
spend it all on Gundams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got some black market gun models. Yeah. So yeah, James, what do you think of the core mechanics?
I found them... I have not actually played through the game. I apologise for that. Partly as logistics, partly, as I say, not really my style of thing. I found them a little too mechanical, if that makes any sense. If a core mechanic can be too mechanical. There's quite a lot of exceptions. There's quite a lot of things that you need to bear in mind. And in a game that's kind of about that, in terms of having to think about all your responsibilities and everything you're going to have to pay for and everything, all of that, I found having that mechanical load on top of that was not the way I would have done it, and I could feel my mind, even just I was trying to hold the concepts within my mind. It was kind of, there is a lot going on here. There are a lot of exceptions. There are a lot of different skills, different modifiers that are going to come in and affect this. I mean, just the steps running through the basic dice mechanic. It's not an elegant system. It's almost, there are moments of elegance, but an awful lot of it is kind of game designed by brute force. I felt, which has the desired effect, but if this had been a European system, I can't.
You do feel forced and brutalized.
Well, yes, very good. But a European system, I think, would have done it in a lot fewer pages.
No, I mean, I could see that. It does seem intimidating first. I do know in practice it is very easy to teach because you don't need to. A lot of it has to do with different roles. Like there are tough spots which give your character a specialty, but like you can choose to be a general well-rounder or like a specialist in one field. Fighting, talking, sneaking. Technology, fixing, repairing, hacking. And and those kind of trade-offs. And there's a difference between range combat and melee combat. I do want to mention a couple, other core sort of principles that also go again the feed in the mechanics. One, everything has a cost. Everything has charges. Items have charges, and your rations are an item. Your rations represent how many calories your characters consume. So every time you do something physical, you have to spend rations. That's how the game sort of abstracts it. And then items like your rations have an upkeep cost, which is very much an anti-min-maxing feature, because that means the more items you have, the more you have to pay to keep them working. Now you can neglect upkeep, in which case you have to roll to see if your item breaks or loses features or upgrades every session. And a few items are immune to it, like grenades, but grenades are one-use items, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So really in practice...
Welcome to Honest Ross Payton's School of Grenade Maintenance.
Yeah.
Is the pin in?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, don't put it near the campfire. But in practice, you want to... a player character, a taker, only has like 3 to 5 items. And then they're only good at a couple of things. And they don't want to spend too much to upgrade their character, because they want to save to retirement, because your humanity damage, once you... your humanity is divided into 3 tracks. Thanks, Greg, again, for your tracks from Unknown Army. But each one has 15 dots in it, divided into 3 sections of 5 each. But once you go past one of those cracks, you can't go back. And once one of them gets all filled up, your character's gone. So basically, it's a race against time if your character can retire before they break down mentally. And so, because, jobs are unpredictable. Sometimes you might take massive humanity hits, self-control hits, and crack, and you can't get that back. So that feeds into it as well. I like that. I thought that was a very nice and effective way of modeling it. Rations, on the other hand, which you mentioned, I read through it, and I can understand why it's there in terms of a kind of logistics thing, but it just felt like health packs in a video game, or magic potions in a video game. Quaff it immediately, get your health back. It felt like an abstraction too far. It was too far removed from the grittiness that is kind of implicit and omnipresent within a setting like this. And it's I don't know, one of the things that just kind of jarred for me.
Well, I don't think that's how it's meant to function. It's, I want to make an exceptional effort. So I am marking off a rations mark to have enough calories to do it. And it's not that you're immediately gobbling a freeze-dried chicken wing in the moment. It's that, this indicates, okay, you're dipping into your reserves, and you'll eat that granola bar later, but eventually you're going to be all out of granola. Mm-hmm. And so that it's another thing of like, well, can I really afford to hold this door shut?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it boils down to, because the principle of the game is that everything is one and done, in the sense that you can't keep re-rolling. The GMs are very encouraged to say, like, one person can try it once and that's it. So only you can if you fail to hold the door, another PC can't rush up and hold it for you. You can't just you could, if you were all helping together, then everybody spends rations together. So the idea is to not let players keep re-rolling things, so make every roll count. And once you're gassed, there is a mechanic taken from Gumshoe, which is the preparedness sort of thing through refresh, where you can refresh items during the gameplay, but you only have so much. And so you can refresh your rations, but that means you probably don't have extra ammo for your gun. And you can do really good once, spend a lot of rations to hold that door closed, or to, cut that zombie's head off. But then later on, when you're being chased, you're not going to have the energy to run away from the crazed cultists. So, the fact that even your machete has charges on it, and it's like, oh well, yeah, you can refresh it, or eventually it'll break.
You'll find another one, right? They're just lying around on the ground out there in the lost, right?
And when you put a number on everything, it means the players have to start like taking like how much of a nice guy can I afford to be? Like, we heard some people need help, like, but they're on the way to our job site, and we could help them, but they can't pay us back. Can I basically donate my energy and my ammo to help them? Or am I going to need that for the job so I can get paid so I can feed my family? Like, it really emphasizes the economic horror when you only have very limited resources and everything's accounted for, and can you afford to do that? Can you afford to do this? Yeah.
The dismal calculus.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you listening at home, does this sound like fun? You want to play this yet?
It is an actual fun game. I will tell you that. But it is a horror game. It is very much a front end horror game, and it's a lot of people I've explained it to. It's like, no, that hits too close to home. I cannot play that game. You know.
I'm trying to remember who it was who described. It might have been Caleb himself who described it as, I wanted to write a game about the horrors of economics, and I put zombies in to make it less threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I put the zombies in to sweeten it.
Make it more commercial as well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I've got some points about the horrors of economics to come to later on, but I will say, if you enjoy video games like Darkest Dungeon, which is, you're going down into dungeons and having psychological effects, and you're having to buy more stuff, all of that, basically dungeon bashing through hardship. If you like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, in fact, which is another game where you quite often, or a lot of GMs run it, that there is economic pressure on the players, so they're never going to ascend through the class structure that's within the class system rather than the character class system to stress that. They're going to stay down at the bottom, the lower levels of the social strata. If that kind of thing appeals to you, I think you might well get a good kick out of this.
If Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing is the game where you start out thinking you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and eventually find out you're playing Call of Cthulhu, this is the game where you start out thinking that you're in Zombieland, but in fact, you're just another exploited gig economy worker.
Yeah, you're actually playing Monopoly.
Yeah, it is very much
winning.
You're actually losing at Monopoly.
Yes.
Yeah. That was obviously a big influence on it, was the gig economy, because that's why Ubik is there. And there are ways to like automatically succeed, like we mentioned willpower, but there's also, if you have a computing device, a laptop or Ubik glasses, because back when Caleb started writing it, Google Glasses was a thing. So it's like, well, why not say there's better future Ubik glasses, or
the one thing that's better about this future is that Google Glass worked.
Yeah, as opposed to everyone else's shitty VR helmet. Ross, you might know, is Ubik a reference in any way to the Philip K. Dick novel of the same name? Or is it just which spells it with a K, not a Q? Yeah,
Caleb never mentioned it. I wouldn't be surprised if he's read the novel, but I don't remember him talking about it. But again, it's,
I figured it was ubiquitous.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes from.
Which I think is where Philip K. Dick got it from as well.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if it was a tip of the hat.
I'll have to ask him.
Bringing in that kind of, that kind of... Dick himself was a man who lived in poverty for an awful lot of his life, and like so many artists became wildly successful after he had died.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was a hat tip, or at least
I'll get back to you on that. Maybe you mentioned podcast 5 years ago, but I may have forgotten about that. I also want to mention the other. There is one big system in the game that is optional but sort of important for the campain model.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
Negotiations and for jobs.
Yep.
Yeah. So in short, basically at the beginning of a session, every player you have to find work. Although there are campaign models where you don't have to worry about this, and it is optional. There are optional rules to remove this, but the idea is you research, you network, you find out there's 3 clients, each one's offering a job. You don't know how much, but you start talking to them. You pick one and you start talking to them and try and negotiate the best price. This is where social skills, usually there is a negotiator in the team who has min-maxed their social skills. And the rest of the team is behind the scenes assisting them, researching the client, researching the job, and manipulating the local economy to up the price, all the while the client is trying to lower the price. And there is an opposed tracker where you move back and forth to find out how much the job is going to be worth to the takers. And if you do very well, the job could be worth a lot of money, or if you do very poorly,
jackpot.
Yeah. And I'm not going to explain all of the mechanics because it is very complex. But I will say in play, it is a very rewarding thing to do in campaign, because the classic thing that player groups do is it happens before you leave the safety of your home. So all the player characters have everything, all their willpower, all their items are charged, all their favors are uncalled, all their references are available. So everyone's like, okay, I'm going to find out what our client is really into. I'm going to, research this. I'm going to do this to get an advantage. Oh, I failed that check. Well, we really need the money. I'm going to burn my 1 willpower point. I'm going to call my 1 favor. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend these charges on these items.
I'm choking now, but if I take another bite, that will push the first bite down, and I'll stop choking.
And so by the time they leave to start going to the play, just by the time they begin the job, they're like, oh, we're going to make so much money. But they burned up a lot of their resources, and they know they can't back away now. They've sunk too much into this.
The sunk cost fallacy has them in its grasp.
Yeah. And like some of the actions they can do is just find out what the real complication of the job is going to be. But that's not going to make the money. It'll make it easier to do the job, but there's always a complication. They don't always do that. So then they get blindsided by something, and they are in too deep. They have to keep going forward again.
Well, in retrospect, I wish I'd spent the money to find out that was going to happen beforehand, rather than spending the money on this prosthetic leg afterwards.
Yeah. So that's how it does it very well, but it does take a lot of learning the rules and getting players to because it's done like a heist. The negotiators talking, everyone else is doing. There's a cutaway scene of what each other player is doing to help the team out negotiate. So yeah.
Yeah. And it all ties into the way that the contracts themselves are structured. And the game is interesting because it uses contracts rather than scenarios, and has a very well thought through system for putting contracts together as the
market.
The market. I got stuck on the word machine. I apologize. As the market, which the GM, it enables you. It's a really nice, elegant way of exploring the boundaries of these things, while at the same time keeping it within the genre and putting together all the factors that a good structured contract, which will lead to a good structured play experience, will require. I enjoyed that section a good deal. I should have, if I had time, I would have run through creating some contracts, because it's quite fast. And it looks like it would be just doing that, in the same way that creating a character within many systems can just be rewarding. I think creating contracts would also simply be fun as a kind of a plot exercise.
Oh yeah, I've gotten to the point where I just sort of like come up with I've done like, oh, there's a contract where oh wait, no, that was a score. So yeah, the other thing is scores. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yes,
but yeah, coming up with ideas for contracts is really fun, because you can come up with the dumbest thing. Oh yeah, I had there's a warehouse full of this useless item, but now it's worth something because they can salvage some component out of it, or
they figured out that if you pry this one circuit out of the back of the doll's head, you can use it to fix Ubix specs. It's the same circuit.
And sometimes jobs will sound easy or like straightforward, But then you realize, and then of course the complication always comes in, and you can be really. I've had the players get very serious because the complication wasn't actually the job. The job was transport eggs, across from one enclave to the other, because they're fresh eggs from a farm, and they're very valuable. But like they're eggs, so like
no,
but no.
It's like Sorcerer. It's like the movie Sorcerer, only instead of well, it's going to be very dangerous to move all this unstable nitroglycerin. It's like, no, they'll just break and you won't get paid.
But the complication was when they delivered the eggs, they were like, okay, here's half your money. You'll have to carry these more. You'll have to carry this. Their job was to take cooking oil to this farm enclave. And they said when they got there, delivered the cooking oil, they're like, the complication was, here's half the money, here's the other half of the money in eggs. And they're like, what? We want money. We don't want eggs. They're like, sorry, we only have eggs.
We don't grow money. We grow eggs.
And the players were like at this farm, and it was a farming enclave, and they were about ready to draw guns, and they were like, I said, oh, there's a family, there's kids, you feeding the chickens, it's just this pastoral scene. Like they were staring daggers at me, like in real life. They were because I messed with the money, and they were so like, I'm afraid of like doing a job, like, all right, you do this thing, all right, sorry, the money's not on me right now, it's next, I'll pay you next week, and like I feel like I wouldn't survive that.
Yeah, well, I could just see them. I mean, there's a certain breed of player who'd be like, you can pay me in money or I'm gonna take your tractor.
Yeah,
because a tractor has value and won't go bad immediately.
Yes. I know a bunch of players who go, I'll take your tractor because I can drive a tractor and that'd be fun. I can run over zombies. But
well, and that's definitely part of the rules.
Yeah. There are vehicles, and then
there are considerable vehicle rules.
But then the problem with vehicles is then you need to actually earn more money to justify keeping the vehicle, because vehicles are expensive. They need fuel, they need repairs, they need all kinds of things. So
it's expensive to be rich too.
Negotiations are always fun, but it, for one shots, obviously it's not really worth it, but for campaign, it ties into everything so much. But the other option is scores, and scores are, players generate like, oh, I heard that there's a valuable cache, there's this warehouse filled with, dog food, and we can use the dog food, or we could use, this thing. And so it's about going to a place, getting a bunch of a valuable commodity and coming back. But there's always going to be a complication. Then they have to resell it. So they have to negotiate a price with a wholesaler, and then they have to get the thing, get as much of the thing and get back. And so that's a little easier to do. In principle, but it's still it's fun to vary. Yeah.
Your options are be someone else's chump or go into business for yourself and have all the problems of people complaining that you haven't fulfilled your post-apocalyptic Kickstarter.
Oh no, yeah.
Sorry, Rain fans. I cry every night.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb did get like at least one or two death threats over the Red Markets Kickstarter. So
really, wow!
For
I've never
shipping,
I've never gotten a death threat. Wow.
Well,
no, I got a lot of insults. I didn't get no actual death threats.
Yeah, because Caleb said, well, it's going to cost more than I said because, it's a year later and shipping to Europe is expensive. But a few people didn't like that. It, again, mentioned on our RPPR through the, I think the episode's called Shipping the Devil. Shipping is the devil. It is, shipping things is hard.
It is.
Yeah. It is getting better from where it was 2 years ago. This is a digression. I don't know if people know. The cost, it used to cost, if you were printing in China particularly, which is always an option if you're doing, books, but particularly board games. It was about $3,000 or £3,000 to bring a good-sized container, I think a 40-foot container over from China. That went up very, within the course of about 6 or 7 months, it went up to £18,000 to £19,000 for the same container. And that's why board games suddenly got very expensive. And those prices are coming down, but are still nowhere near where they were 2 or 3 years ago. Yes, all kinds of reasons: ships getting stuck in the Suez Canal, and pandemics, and all the rest of it, and capitalism, which brings us back to.
Well, I mean, there's. Have you heard the phrase ratchet capitalism? You know, the ratchet only goes one way. Things get more expensive, and then once people are used to paying that increased price, if circumstances change to make something cheaper, there's no incentive to lower that price. Why would you leave that money on the table? You'll get sued for failing to do your duty to your shareholders.
And people will pay that amount now.
Yeah. When I found out that shareholders could sue a corporation if it was not sufficiently, if it failed to take even unethical or illegal actions that would be profitable, maybe not illegal actions, but that, you could say, oh, because of your ethics, we lost money and now I'm suing you. I'm like, this is not how I want things to be run. This is bad. It explained a lot, though.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, capitalism is a horror show, basically. I'm not sure we need additional role-playing games to tell us this.
A lot of people love it, though. And I suspect that a lot of people who think capital... And I mean, it's better than feudalism. It was a step in the right direction. But that I suspect a lot of the same people who are like, oh man, in a zombie apocalypse, I would just become this cool-ass warlord with a gold-encrusted machete, and I would rule the wasteland. These are the same people who are convinced that Elon Musk would really like them if he met them in person, and that eventually one day they too will be billionaires, starting with their TikTok influencer stuff.
Your comment earlier about board games made me think of board game night and families, which... One other core system in the game is the vignette, the home life, the work-life balance. So we mentioned dependents, and each dependent costs 1 bounty per session, per adventure, essentially, to keep fed and sheltered and happy. But at the beginning...
Lisa needs braces.
Lisa needs braces. There is a vignette system to, like, what is your take in doing between jobs? Like, what is their home life like? And there are mechanics for this where you can choose whether there is you role play a scene, and another player takes on the role of the family or the dependents, because dependents have to be people, but they so they have to be someone who can talk back to the player usually. And you can use support, engage, or let's see here, cope. So whether the dependent is supporting the taker, or the taker is helping them out with some problem, or you engage, which is like world building, like sort of flesh out the enclave. Like, what do you all do for fun? Like, do you play? Is there a basketball court? Is there an amateur theater group?
You got one of those Thunderdomes going?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and. They're very fun. You do them at the beginning of the session, before you start getting in negotiations. And if they're successful, you can mark off a column of trauma, because there's 3. There's detachment, stress, and trauma, and each represents a different kind. Detachment represents, how much you like other people. If you're just like, well, I'll let you get eaten by casualties because you're not worth the bullets to save. That's detachment. I'm being eaten by zombies. That's trauma. Seeing your friend, seeing your equipment get ripped apart by casualties. That's stress.
That's stress.
Yeah. But and they're all lined up. So each dependent removes the rightmost column of stress, and they do that for free. And that's otherwise you have to spend a bounty per box. So yeah.
So if you want to min-max it, you need to keep your psychological damage balanced too.
So yeah, the vignette scenes are really key to building immersion and sort of like keeping things out, because you have to upkeep them. And I think because like your equipment, your dependents everyone needs money, it turns out. And I think that's the last bit of like how the game does what it does, is explaining what a bounty is.
If I can if I can jump in there.
Sure.
For me, the vignette system is one of the most fully realized and interesting downtime systems, which we talked about a bit in the context of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and we've talked about other games. But normally, where the downtime section of a campaign is where you do the bookkeeping. Here, yes, you're doing the bookkeeping, but it's economic bookkeeping, it's financial bookkeeping. But at the same time, you are actually having to go through the family maintenance and stuff like. Whereas in other games, you're upgrading your skills and you're upgrading your equipment. Here, you're making sure that your family and your dependents and everyone else are okay, and it feels narratively like it all fits together in a really interesting sequential storytelling way. It all fits. And I thought that was really nicely realized. A nice piece of structural design.
Yeah. Especially because like other players take on the role of your dependent, so they can sort of build up these other personas as the campaign progresses, and sort of like build up mini storylines, like a B plot in your game.
Yes, exactly. They're not just it's your family's reaction is not just the result of some dice rolls. It's they feel like real people because they're being played by real people.
Yeah,
and it's a very simple idea, and I think probably too logistical for a lot of role playing games, where because of the traditional idea that downtime is just downtime, it's a time where you're not actually role playing.
Yeah,
to keep the role playing going, but with a very different pace and with a different purpose.
I think a lot of good role playing comes from giving it a very focused structure. Like. In the Fallen Flag campaign for RPG Action Play, the one where Caleb was a player, his character, was married, but then and had a kid, but then during the crash, the actual zombie outbreak, he lost track of his family, and he each assumed the others were dead. But then he finally got into the Enclave and found out that his wife had moved on and had found another guy. And so basically his vignette scenes were like, well, we're just going to act like we're divorced and like take care of the kid, because it's about having the kid happy and dealing with that awkwardness of like,
oh my god,
yeah. And it became a whole like moving subplot, and
that sounds amazing.
Yeah. It led to a lot of really great moments, both comedic and sad and tragic. It giving the focus really helps with it, and it's also very relatable too, because it always it just boils down to the money so often, and which
can your new man provide you with doll heads that fix computers like a sexy taker can?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to a degree, yeah. It's like, I'm going to save up to retirement and bring my family, win her back and go back to the loss, or go back to the recession with, rich, and that'll be that. You'll have to listen to the campaign to find out how that works out.
I think Caleb may have mentioned.
This was the campaign ended years ago, but I think we're.
Are we at how do people play it?
Yeah.
Because I have thoughts.
Okay, yeah, please.
So it is extremely structured in its own way, and it's very, very narrow. It does one thing in one setting where it's like, you are people who go into the zombie-infested wasteland to work, and that is all you can play, and you can't play anything else. Compare and contrast with Coyote and Crow, where it's like, oh, well, what do you want to do? You can do, whatever. And I think that in this case, that focus serves this game very well. And you can be proactive within that structure. The build your own score rules, where you're like, fuck you, Mr. Johnson. You're just going to rip me off again. I'm not going to do your mission. I'm going to go out and, get the doll heads for me. It's
yeah, exactly.
Roach Freddy looks out for Roach Freddy, and that's it. I think its narrowness serves it well, and that, within the fact that there are structure, it's like guardrails that gives you permission to do, it's like, okay, well, I'm within the guardrails, so I can do X. I know I can do X. Whereas if you don't have signposts and guardrails and you're just off-roading, you're like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I mean, maybe I'll do a cool donut, or maybe I will wind up lost in the middle of the wasteland.
That's what it comes down to. It's a game about like you're presented with these impossible choices and trying to survive them. Like you can't, a lot of role-playing games are about like figuring out how to cut the Gordian knot, how to do the thing that seems to be impossible. But because you're the hero, you can do the impossible thing. But in Red Markets, you can't cut the Gordian knot. You just have to like, basically eat shit in one of this way or that way. And
you could have it with mint sauce. You could have it with chocolate sauce. You could
'cause
have
that's
it with A1 steak sauce. But one way or another, my brother, you're going to eat it.
Because like warm feelings aren't going to pay your bills. Like you can be the hero and you could save people and then let your dependents suffer for
exactly.
it.
You are still the hero. You're still fighting zombies and completing missions and stuff like that. So within the traditional structure of a role playing game, you are succeeding. It's just you're not getting the things that you need to survive, or to keep the people you care about above water. And that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, I think probably like. I mentioned the game where Caleb was a player. Probably one of the highlights of the campaign for me came fairly early on, where the players, found this job where they had to go. This enclave hired them to clear out a community of squatters in a gated community. They wanted them to kick them out.
Speaking of capitalism,
yeah, exactly, and. It was getting to be cold. The game campaign was set in Colorado, and so there was not, east of the Rocky Mountains, very flat, plains territory, and so they kicked them out. And there's also this NPC from that enclave watching them, but the player characters realize, there's slave, they. On the way there, they encountered slavers, because slavery's back, because in the Lost there are no laws. And the player characters not only fight them off, they actually secretly infect them with the blight to turn them into zombies.
Nice.
Because we hate those guys. And then
no way. Do you think might boomerang and bite us in the ass? No way, Merle. This is 100% solid. General Eisenhower and Buddha would approve of us infecting these guys with the blight.
Yeah, what could go wrong? So the player characters realized that the slavers had been tipped off by the Enclave and just didn't tell the takers, them, about it. Like, the idea was that the slavers would come along, grab the squatters after they're kicked out of the gated, community.
Once they're defenseless.
Yeah. Then just sell them into slavery somewhere.
Right.
And the Enclave thought they were doing the right thing, because, once we need those houses, and we need to, if they don't have something, they're just going to freeze to death in the winter. So the slavers are saving their lives, really, if you think about it. So the player characters are like, no, we'll escort them back to our own Enclave. They have to find an abandoned house to spend the night. And they can hear casualties all about, and so Caleb is like, hey kids, let's play Bullet Head. Just put these put things in your ears, and so you can't hear anything. Yay! Trying to convince the kids not to freak out because they hear all the the moaning and the casualties rattling about. And then the next day, as they're escorting all these refugees back to their own Enclave, where they had to burn a lot of favors to let them even be in. But guess what? They encounter a lot of vectors. The slavers that they infected earlier are now attacking them, and they barely, two players almost get killed, and they get paid because they got the squatters, but all that extra effort to save the squatters got them some positive reputation. People think that they're cool, but they nearly all died for no extra money. And they took a lot of emotional trauma from all that, and they had to spend money to get extra grenades to kill the vectors, and it was this whole thing, and everything was like one bad dice roll could have ended it really badly, and so all of the decisions, they made it harder for themselves in order to be able to sleep at night, and that's sort of where Red Markets, I think, shines, is because you realize, I can do the thing and get paid. I could do the thing easily and be a really shitty person. So I'm going to do the really hard thing in order to live with myself. And economic horror, baby. So, yeah. But in general, a lot of people play it. There are a lot of actual plays doing it, and a lot of people play it rather gonzo. Just have fun with it. They actually have two variants of the rules, the boom and bust rules. The boom rules make it more action oriented, give the player more resources. The bust rules make it the opposite, where it's more of a grinding poverty simulator, where it's more about just eking out a survival. So there's a lot of different ways to actually engage with the rules, which I really like too.
Well, and so are we on to why do people play it that way?
One of the things that occurred to me as I was reading through it, and particularly the sections on economics, and it's not just grinding poverty simulation by simply not giving the players enough stuff to pay all their outgoings. There's more economic stuff going in. There's some supply-demand curves in there, and it's it feels like a zombie simulator with a layer of economic simulation layered on top of it. There's a really interesting board game publisher over in Singapore called Capital Gains Studios, and they are economists. That's what they do.
Oh no!
And they build board games, family-style board games, so hobby style, so not more sophisticated than Monopoly, which is itself an economic simulator and was designed explicitly as such as the Landlord's Game. Have I talked about this before? I can't remember.
Yes.
Do you know this? I have.
Yes, that it was the landlord's game. And it's like, oh, everybody, see how terrible it is to be one of those awful landlords. And everyone's like, I won't be an awful landlord.
That'll be the fun bit. Yeah. But they create games, Deadzilla and Wonga Mania and cryptocurrency, that actually take proper economic principles and boil them down in a very simplistic algorithmic way to fit within game rules. Wonga Mania has a very, very neat board system that simulates the boom-bust cycle of the economic process.
What's a Wonga?
Wonga it's slang for money in various English-speaking territories. Wonga.
Not this one.
It's like 80s, early 90s slang, I think.
Nope.
Still understood.
I don't know why you're lying to me, James, but I refuse to believe this.
Okay. The way they can take complex principles and boil them down in a way that makes them both accessible and entertaining, and yet without losing what makes them important, is I've been impressed by them for several years. And
that's very cool.
In particular, I really like cryptocurrency. Is basically it's more about the kind of the pyramids. How much can you build your investment? Can you get out before the whole thing collapses? That kind of principle.
How many suckers can you find?
Yeah, very, very much. I felt this game could have, Red Markets could have perhaps done with a little bit of that kind of bringing the elegance to it and the simplicity, rather than going, here are some economic principles, here's how to build them into a game. Here's how to use supply-demand curves and stuff like that, which, this is intelligent stuff. This is proper economics. But we're within the game world here. We're not, it's not a simulation. It's a literary device, essentially. We are simulating a world of grinding poverty. We don't have to go through the same level of detail. The main currency, which I apologize, I'm blanking on the name of because
the bounty.
I did not sleep last night. The bounty,
yeah.
It's incredibly granular. It's big chunks. It doesn't feel like dollars. It doesn't feel like a monetary currency.
Yeah,
it is in big chunks, which are not divisible. You can't have half a bounty point. So it's not trying to simulate this stuff, and yet at the same time, it's trying to engage with actual economic principles. And this is towards the end of the book. This is not the earlier stuff. I was disappointed that it didn't take those economic principles and build them more into the rulesy structure of the game, possibly in a way that amplified the horrific aspects of the game, rather than simply grinding poverty, which, just as the zombies are almost background noise in a lot of zombie things, they're the kind of the color that drives the plot on, but aren't actually what drives the human drama.
Yeah.
The economic stuff kind of, it drives a lot of the stuff. But again, it's a cycle. It becomes a repetitive cycle of what am I going to have to sell this week so that I can, maintain the things that are really important to me. What am I going to have to give up?
Yeah. What horrible decision am I going to have to make? I mean, the bounty, in the setting of the game, the bounty is technically a government ID card from a zombie in the laws that you can turn into the government, and they will give you a bounty of cash or resources or food, and that has become a stable form of currency in the game's lore. They say, well, it's like gold-backed currency, only instead of mining rocks, we're mining dead people, so it's become this portable, stable form of value. The reason why it is you can't go below one bounty is because he kept it very low numbers in order to make it easier at the game table. That's why every single item in the game has 10 charges in it, and some items just burn 2 charges or multiple charges instead of 1 every time you activate the item, and so a lot of these. It seems clunky at first, but there was a lot of years of playtesting, and this was what worked at the game table, and it was simple and simplified, but while retaining these core principles. But yeah, it's about being stuck in a dead-end job and being in a risky job, and then taking bigger and bigger risks in order to break that cycle of poverty. So, I mean, there are rules in the book for investments and for building side businesses, and taking those kind of risks. But that's sort of beyond the core gameplay loop, which is you go out, you do job, you come back. Because I mean, that's what tabletop RPGs have been about for decades now. That it's a procedural, right? But it's a procedural where you understand everything you do, you know what it will cost to do. You don't know if it'll work or not, and you know what the stakes are. It does it in a very concrete way that really no other game I've seen does that, to where you understand as a player in this game, what it costs to rescue someone, not just the risk, but what it costs to your character to do that. And it emphasizes the cost, because, in a lot of games, you just keep trying things. Why not? You're a D&D adventurer. Why not carry along, get your bag of holding, get 100 magic items in there, just carry around everything you might need. Just become a magic item hoarder.
Golf bag full of swords. Oh, it's a frost type, getting out the fireblade. Exactly.
Yeah. And then this one is no, those have costs like that. You're losing a lot by hoarding things. And also gives you a reason to spend your money other than your own upgrading your character to become more and more of a murder hobo.
Yeah.
Although you do also want to upgrade your character to be more and more of a murder hobo. That's definitely something you need to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. The only RPG I can think of that does that kind of thing is Luke Crane's Torchlight, which is if you really liked the bookkeeping... Torchbearer. Sorry. Yeah, Torchlight's a video game. Torchbearer, which is if you really like the bookkeeping side of the older editions of Dungeons & Dragons, this is the role-playing game for you. If encumbrance systems are the first rules you turn to in a new game, Torchbearer is your game. It left me somewhat cold, I have to say. But
I can imagine.
It does it almost, I think, for the joy of it. It's I couldn't, if it was making a point, I couldn't find the point. Whereas it is the point here.
Yeah. We haven't even really mentioned the human foes in this game, because the zombies are the weather, but your human foes and the aberrants are the real cause of your misery for the most part. There are a lot of interesting cults, which are always fun. I always like them in video games. In particular, the Meek and the Shepherd and Black Math.
Black Math. I was like, if I was going to play this, I would be tempted to be a Black Math cultist.
Yeah, and you totally can. You can. In fact, that is a spot your character can take to be a member of a cult. But the shepherds want to... they're the trope in the zombie movie of Martha ain't doing too well, I have to keep her in the basement. They think they can cure their zombified, infected loved ones, and so they look after them, but don't let people eliminate them. The meek, on the other hand, think everyone should be undead, and they try to infect everyone. And they're the ultimate nihilistic baddies. And then Black Math, they're all about like, got to make that ratio work, got to get my kill count up. They're very much the murder hobo cult. Like, I had in the Fallen Flag campaign, one of the NPC competitor taker groups were a group of like from a Catholic school, so they were but led by a priest. And so they were like Catholic Black Math. They were on a crusade and
cat math.
Yeah. And yeah, the Black Math, they make tally mark scars on their skin, and they're just trying to up the rate. But they could be antagonists too. They were like, well, that enclave looks like it could fall. Let's kill them all, take their stuff, so we can buy more weapons, so we can up the number. You can get very brutal, or they just want that weapon. They just want to blow up zombies. They don't care. Oh, well, we can kill a lot of zombies if we blow up this dam and flood this area.
Zombies don't like water.
Yeah, the zombies don't like water. So who cares if there'll be a famine or a drought, or we'll flood a town? Yeah. Then there are the Randians, because the libertarians.
How did I skip that? How did I miss that bit?
So they're the ones who practice slavery and just believe in business and just ruthless. And
nothing
then
personal.
Obviously there's your garden variety raiders and bandits, but then there's DHQS. DHQS is the government security agency that operates beyond the recession. They operate in the loss, and they are your classic Black Ops spooks. They want to make sure that no enclave or alliance of enclaves gets too powerful to threaten the government. So they like destabilizing enclaves and pulling shady ops to like retrieve government resources, fight the Moths, which are the basically terrorist / rebel faction that doesn't like the government and are trying to compete. And so you can get political games, you can get, horror games with the cults, you can get action games, Mad Max with the raiders and bandits. And that's not to mention, there's also the Crusaders, which are scientists and doctors who are trying to study the Blight, and they have become Lovecraftian narrators / protagonists, gone zero sand cultist in the sense, trying to understand it. So there's a lot of variety of antagonists you can use, aside from making up your own enclaves. And it's a post-apocalyptic blank slate. Like the game doesn't really explain much about what's happening in any given particular region. So you can just take your own hometown, and if it's west of the Mississippi, and be like, this is what's happening, and these are the enclaves here, and go nuts.
Okay.
Also, in terms of, one other thing is people have started hacking the profit system. So Ethan Cordry of Technical Difficulties podcast is working on Red Market's Black Death, which is medieval Europe. The Black Death ain't just the bubonic plague. Players are, it's a Middle Ages hack of Red Markets, where your knights and scribes and trying to survive and earn enough money to stay in the shelter of the castle walls.
Interesting. Early days of the mercantile economy. Yeah, I can see how that would work.
Mm-hmm. I've actually had an idea of doing my own Red Markets hack, which would be a kaiju apocalypse. So think of like Pacific Rim and like in the first movie where Ron Perlman's character is a black marketer, like grabbing kaiju bits from the fights and selling them on the black market. And so, that would be neat. Like you just, you live in one of the city states that has a kaiju protecting it. And you go out where the kaiju fight each other and, scavenge bits and parts and, it's I don't know if I'll ever do anything with that idea, but I think it's a very versatile system.
Yeah, I mean the bits scavenging idea I had at one point. I started a novel about this where it was it was post-apocalyptic, but it was a religious apocalypse. Mm-hmm. Where the god, it even had zombies in it now that I think about it, because the god of death had been killed so no one could die. And people who died just had to put up with the fact that their heart wasn't beating anymore and that they were, and so part of the plot of the novel was, the gods have decided they need a new god of death, or they're going to do a goddess of death this time. So, we're going to get her born, and we just have to have her grow up. But what magic was is that people would go out into this wasteland where angels and demons had just been going to town on each other. And they're like, yeah, it turns out if you take an angel feather and like a demon talon, they resist being pushed together. But if you push them together far enough, then they'll produce fire and lightning. And if you can get some bones, you can aim it. And it's just this.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that in the Prophet. Yeah,
someday something will happen with that.
Well, you got a system for it now.
Yeah, I have a system now for it.
I do have an idea for a Red Markets hack about magic, because magic is on the Caleb told me, well, you can't do magic in Red Markets. It's all about the cost, right? Well, no, you can you do risk. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, do magic, you have a magic skill, you make a roll, and you can keep pushing your luck to keep casting the magic, and it gets harder and harder to do until it finally blows up in your face, or you spend will to do it, and that's why they have so much willpower. But like, you just it's more it's about speculation and risk over return. And I think you could do something fun with that, but that's just an idle thought. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's a very cathartic game to play.
Yes. So why people play it that way? And I mean, I will emphasize, I'm like, why is the game that way? Well, because it's Caleb's vision. And then I'm like, oh wait, no, why do people play in Caleb's vision? And I mean, I think it's cathartic. You can, it's like, oh, this magnifies things that in my life are tiny little hassles, and blows them up big enough that I can see sort of their the structures that make them possible. And it confirms your nasty suspicions, and sometimes it's fun to have your worst suspicions confirmed. Like Delta Green, sometimes you just want to look at the worst.
And occasionally transcend them, like the player characters did save those squatters from enslavement or death at great personal cost. And they, it wasn't worth it to them monetarily, but they still did it and would have done it any time. And so yeah, that is heroic to do the right thing at great risk without a reward, and
at cost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And at cost. Yeah.
And there's a lot of proper heroism in role-playing games, to be honest. It's,
I mean, that was I think John Wick's argument about how the most heroic role-playing game was Call of Cthulhu, because it's nihilistic. Even God isn't going to reward you for doing the right thing. And that these people are just like, no, we are going up against horrors we cannot hope to win or even comprehend to get another day for somebody.
And it may be your dependents, it may be some strangers who never know you or thank you, but would you do that? It's not for everybody, but yeah, there's a free quick start guide for Red Markets. I highly recommend it. It has pre-made characters and an adventure. There's tons of actual plays out there.
Strangely,
you won't be hurting for those.
The print run has run out though, so you'd have to find a used copy, but although the PDF is available. Caleb was talked about doing a second edition at some point, but that is a ways off in the future, so there's no immediate plans for that. There are supplements in the works, though. I know there's a mass combat, war supplement, and some other things. So Red Markets, it's pretty good. But thank you all so much for listening. Again, thanks to all our backers. I would like to thank Ian, Matthew, Michael, Berg for your support. It means a lot, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I would like to thank Eric Saltwell and say, thank you for your patience. I will get that game run for you.
Yep.
We'll schedule that up.
I don't have anyone to thank, unless it turns out that Ian Matthew Michael Berg is in fact two people, in which case I will thank Michael Berg.
There we go. And our next episode will be about metacurrencies, which is very apt because our first 3 episodes have been systems with metacurrencies in them. So we'll figure out when to record that and get back and let you know.
Well, the nice thing about that is we won't have to read a 500-page book. Sorry, Caleb, but it's a big old horse choker.
It is.
Yeah, that was quite epic.
I feel like I got off light because I absorbed the book through oral tradition. Like that is that advantage of being there from ground zero. And
I picture you two sitting by a fire in the wilderness and Caleb making these hand gestures and his beard is even more fluffy than usual.
I mean, occasionally it was like that. Yeah,
somehow
the dark
that's my
days of the
picture.
Kickstarter. Yeah,
my picture of oral tradition.
Yep, that's how it is. That's exactly how it worked. You got it. Right? Got it in one. All right, we'll talk to you all later.
All right.
Yep.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.